As a symbol of the survivor spirit, the Federation Award is in part an annual reminder of what she and her generation represented. And on her behalf, and for all those who came to this county with a fragile awareness of death and loss and an unquestionable passion for life and community, I accept this award. And so, when I am provided with the opportunity to speak, it allows the chance to offer some thoughts about what I am thinking about at this time in my life. I say this having just recently passed another birthday, ensuring that I will get the senior rate at most establishments, and having been blessed with being a first-time grandfather only some 5 months ago, and otherwise thinking about my own place in the vastness of this universe. I say this knowing that it seems like yesterday when I was running around in the sand at Alliance Beach and watching my father play cards, and otherwise hearing the sounds of the chickens only a short distance away from our house. And how as time passes all too quickly, one is ever mindful of what matters in life. And so my words today are about inheritance and remembrance and the community we leave behind. I've been thinking a lot about why we are here and what happens when we are not. Now, when most people think about inheritance, especially in my world as a lawyer, they think about the rather pedestrian world of wills and beneficiaries and of tangible sums of money left by one generation in remembrance to another. The kind of transaction that is often satirized in bits of humor, as is seen in the story of David, who lived with his widowed father, who was very ill. When David found out that he was about to inherit a fortune when his ailing father died, he determined that he needed someone else to enjoy it with. So one evening, David went out to a singles bar, where he spotted the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Her natural beauty literally took his breath away. "I may look like just an ordinary man," he said as he walked sheepishly up to her, "but in just a week or two my father will die, and I will inherit $20 million. Very impressed, the woman went home with David that very evening. 3 days later, the woman became David's stepmother. As that very bad joke indicates, that kind of inheritance can be very fleeting. But there is an inheritance, a legacy, that can be far more substantial. I guess my life has been from the very beginning informed by awareness and remembering. At a very early age, without my parents, both Holocaust survivors, knowing that this was the case, I was aware of their past in Europe, of Auschwitz and labor camps. I was aware I had no grandparents and very few relatives. I was aware, as a very young boy, as I sat in a barber shop on 6th Street in Vineland and read the Police Gazette, that Nazis were being hunted down, and at night, as a very young boy, I would dream not about baseball or stuffed animals, but about being a secret agent trying to kill Adolf Eichmann or Hitler. And sometimes I succeeded, and sometimes, well, yes, there was death. I knew early on that my existence was an accident, that my father had a prior family that had died, that he had children that had not survived, that I was my parents' symbol by my birth of a new breath rising from the ashes of recent history. I and the other members of my generation was a living link into an unknowable future from a shattered past that was never to be forgotten. Such was my inheritance. I grew up very early in support of the underdog and despised the bully. Perhaps it can be said that much of the little I have done in these years has been with that in mind. And yet at first, I resisted the full embrace of the inheritance, that it would be easier to be something other than Jew or child of survivor, perhaps a more universal self, not having to think about my place in a Jewish past. It has been said that America has been a place where people came to recreate themselves, to become Americans more than Jews or any other groups. There is great temptation to become absorbed in the mythical melting pot of American culture. And yet, there are paths in each person's life that take you to unexpected places. I have been very fortunate, yes, lucky, to have come back to Vineland and to have been provided with the opportunity to make a small footprint in areas that matter to me, in education and in helping people, especially young people, exploring who they are and perhaps in some small way cultivating in each of those persons I have been blessed to teach a small sense of conscience and a sensitivity and compassion for others in the larger community, or as put best recently by Elie Wiesel, to think higher and to feel more deeply. For that, I have too many people to thank, some of whom are no longer alive, who made it possible for me to be me. And so I think a lot about why we are here and the inheritance that was left to me by my parents and their generation. And I remember them and their history. And I constantly ask myself the kind of question that you may recall at the end of Steven Spielberg's film, Saving Private Ryan, about World War II. You know, when an older James Ryan is visiting the cemetery at Normandy and finds the grave of the soldier, John Miller, who helped save his life and who told him during the war, just before he died, in whispered tones, to earn this, to earn it. In the end, that same man, Ryan, asks his wife and family whether he had in fact been a good man. Yes, to render a judgment as to whether the measure of his life had been worthy of the man who had died to allow him to live on. When I think about people like my parents, like Trudy Gordon, and many others like them, I think about the same thing. In the same vein, Vicki and I recently saw a play at Stockton College. It was a one-man play entitled Nazi Hunter that was at its core about the life and work of famed Nazi hunter Simon Wiesenthal. At one point in the play, Wiesenthal recalls a time after the war had ended in which he was assigned to retrieve books that were located at a particular site in Austria. In one of the books he found was a lonely note on a piece of paper addressed to Dear Stranger. Written by an 11-year-old boy named Albert, the note states very simply that the Nazis would soon be there for him and that he wants the stranger who finds the note to remember what had happened to him. The note ends with 3 simple words: I trust you. Wiesenthal remarks how surprised he was, given his experience in Europe, to find someone, anyone, willing to trust a stranger. When I heard those words, I felt that jolt that one gets when one has heard or seen something that resonates loudly within your soul. Albert wanted to be remembered. Bereft of community support, Albert was left to appeal to a stranger, to remember him and what had extinguished his existence. Remembrance is an essential theme of humanity, and certainly for Jews. We believe that it matters to remember our parents, and we do symbolically in the saying of Kaddish. We believe that it matters to remember our history, as is evident in many Jewish holidays, as is the case today on this Hanukkah. When we say Zachor, we remind ourselves that the remembrance of Holocaust is basic to who we are as a people. And yes, when we remember people like Trudy Gordon, we remember what she stood for. The refusal to stand alone, the willingness to go forward, the belief that we are a part of something larger, the understanding that the community matters, and that a better community begins with a compassionate self. I think Trudy would have understood Hannah Sharfstein's Hasidic story of a poor store owner, Abraham, who after having been blessed by a Rebbe, became very rich, but disengaged from his community. With his wealth, Abraham built a big, beautiful house with many items inside, including a huge mirror lined with a thick frame of gold. The same Rebbe returned to the village to visit Abraham. A troubled but patient Rebbe told Abraham to stand in front of his big mirror and asked him, what did he see? Abraham was puzzled at the question, but explained that he could see his own reflection, along with his paintings, his rugs, his drapes, and the other beautiful things in his home. The Rebbe then asked Abraham to look out the window. And it turned out that Abraham knew almost everyone who passed by. The poor widow with many children, the water carrier, Benza, who was elderly and could not carry the water, the tailor, Yankel, who went to shul every day but was poor and had little money for his family, and many others with real needs in his community. The Rebbe then told Abraham that it was strange, that a mirror and a window are both made of glass, and yet they are very different. When you look in the mirror, you can only see yourself and your things. But when you look out the window, you could see your neighbors and friends and the other people in your community. Abraham realized that the window was transparent, but the mirror was opaque, that the light cannot pass through, and thus the mirror can only reflect what is in front of it. Realizing what the Rebbe was trying to teach him, Abraham's eyes were filled with tears. That night, Abraham walked over to his big, beautiful mirror, and with a sharp knife, he scraped off the silver covering in one corner and resolved to look more out the window and less into the mirror. I do what I do, and I will continue to do what I do, just as many of you, because we believe that it matters to leave a meaningful footprint, something our children and our community can build upon as they themselves find meaning in remembrance and community. I thank the Jewish Federation for all that it does, for all of its efforts in promoting a sense of community and consciousness. The Jewish Federation is not an abstraction. It is people, one by one, who are willing to give up their time because they believe in something larger than themselves, because they are willing to look out the window. Their work is vital to the community and deserves your support and admiration. And the work, the necessary work for all of us, will go forward. And yet, in my own way, I too think about Albert, still 11 years old. And I ask, who will remember him and my parents and Vicky's mother Lola and Trudy Gordon and history itself when our generation in time moves off the stage? I look at my own children and my son Michael and Sarah and my granddaughter Leah Sadie. And I think about my many students of yesterday and today, and I look at all the well-meaning teachers who have come to my workshops and the many good people I have met, and I look at you, and all I am left with, once again, is to say, I trust you.